Ever get those like awkward money questions from your kids? You know, those ones that make you go, ugh, how do I explain this? Like maybe they want that expensive toy or this year's vacation isn't quite as grand as they're used to.
Oh, tell me about it. Those conversations can be tough.
Yeah, so today we're really diving into this whole thing, this whole dilemma. Should parents be upfront with their kids about money, especially when things are a little tough?
I'm really curious to hear this because I think every parent struggles with this.
Right, it's a big one. And we've got some really interesting arguments from both sides, so get ready. You might find yourself rethinking your own approach.
Oh, I'm always up for a good perspective shift.
So first up, we've got the whole honesty is the best policy camp. Their thinking is that if we try to keep money struggles a secret, it could actually give kids the wrong idea about money altogether, like it's something taboo.
Yeah, like we shouldn't even talk about it.
Exactly. And that can be harmful in the long run.
Absolutely. This approach is all about normalizing money conversations right from the start. It's about families building trust by acknowledging that, hey, even money isn't always unlimited.
And what's interesting is that studies have actually shown that kids, even really young ones, pick up on way more than we think, especially when it comes to family finances.
It's true. They notice those little cues, those moments of stress or tension.
Right, so constantly saying no without a clear explanation, well, it can lead to confusion, even resentment down the line.
Makes sense. And proponents of this honesty approach, they say that looping kids into these conversations, in an age-appropriate way, of course, helps them feel more responsible.
Like they're part of the team, right?
Exactly. And it teaches them early on that we don't always get what we want. Sometimes we have to prioritize our needs over those wants.
So practical and so important for kids to learn, I think.
For sure. It's about equipping them with a good money mindset, right from the beginning, instead of maybe having them learn these lessons the hard way later in life.
So instead of dodging those money talks, this approach is all about using them as opportunities, as life lessons. Showing kids how to budget, save, and really understand that hard work pays off no matter what their financial situation looks like down the road.
Which are such valuable skills for anyone, no matter their background.
100%.
Yeah.
But let's flip the script for a second. There's another side to this, right? The protect their innocence perspective. They're really concerned about shielding kids from unnecessary stress.
Yeah, childhood should be about exploration and fun, not worrying about grown-up stuff.
Exactly. And this side argues that especially for younger children, revealing financial struggles could really weigh them down.
Imagine a child internalizing those struggles, thinking it's their fault.
It's heartbreaking to think about, right? Feeling guilty or inadequate, like they're somehow responsible for the family situation.
And it goes beyond that. This perspective also highlights how kids might start to see their future as limited by their family's current situation.
Like their dreams are out of reach because money's tight right now.
Right. And that can be a lot for a young person to carry.
It really can. I actually remember reading a study about how childhood experiences with financial hardship were linked to lower beliefs in their own ability to achieve financial success later. It's amazing how much those early experiences can shape how we see the world.
It makes you think about how powerful those early messages can be.
Totally. So here we have this classic parenting dilemma. Complete honesty versus protecting them from potentially harsh realities.
Tough one, right? I mean, both sides have really valid points.
They really do. It's such a complex issue. And that's exactly what makes it so difficult. There's no one right answer, no magic formula. The right approach will always depend on the family, their values, the child's personality, even their cultural background.
So true. It's about finding what feels right for your family, but that can be tough. I mean, you wouldn't sit a 5-year-old down and give them a detailed breakdown of the family finances, would you? Probably not the best approach. But even really young kids can understand simple concepts if we meet them at their level.
Okay, so start small. Like, hey, no movies tonight because we're saving up for that camping trip you really want.
Exactly. You got it. Framing things in a way they understand and gradually introducing more complex ideas as they grow.
So it's less about having the talk and more about creating an ongoing dialogue about money.
Exactly. And remember, actions often speak louder than words. If money is a constant source of stress or arguments at home, kids pick up on that energy. It doesn't matter if you're having direct conversations about finances or not.
It's about creating a safe space for kids to ask questions about money without feeling judged or like a burden. And this brings up another angle to this whole debate, focusing on building healthy financial habits, even if you don't reveal all the specifics about your family's money situation.
This approach is interesting because it's not about how much, But how? It's about teaching values like waiting for what you want, being resourceful, understanding what you need versus what you want, all through everyday actions and conversations.
So instead of we can't afford that, it's more like here's why we're choosing to save our money for something else right now.
Exactly. You're teaching valuable life skills without burdening them with the weight of the family's finances. It's about empowerment, not burden.
I love that. And what I find interesting is, while we often talk about this in the context of families facing financial challenges, this approach can be just as relevant for families who are more financially comfortable.
That's such an important point because even if you can provide everything your children want, it's still crucial to teach them about financial responsibility.
Right, like appreciating what they have, making smart decisions.
Absolutely. It's about raising kids who are aware that not everyone has the same privileges and who are committed to giving back to their communities.
It all comes back to values. This whole conversation really highlights the importance of examining our own baggage around money. Because if we, as parents, haven't dealt with our own anxieties or insecurities about money, they'll inevitably trickle down to our kids, right?
Oh, 100%. If we want our kids to have a healthy relationship with money, we need to model that behavior, addressing our own financial hangups, communicating openly with our partners, even seeking professional help if we need it. Those are all important steps.
It all ties back to creating that stable and loving home environment, which is truly the most valuable asset we can give our kids. But there's a bit of a plot twist here, something you might not expect. This whole tell or not to tell debate gets even more interesting when we bring in cultural influences. We found some really fascinating research that looks at this question through a Chinese lens, and it's pretty thought-provoking.
Oh, wow. I'm really interested to hear about this. It's so important to consider these different perspectives.
Right. And what's fascinating is that this research highlights some potential downsides to revealing financial struggles, particularly in cultures where success and wealth are closely intertwined.
It's a perspective we don't often hear, but it's so important to consider.
Totally. So they argue that in these environments, exposing kids to financial limitations might actually lead to feelings of shame or inadequacy.
That makes sense. Especially in today's world, where kids are bombarded with images of wealth and material possessions on social media. The pressure to fit in can be immense.
It's like that age-old fear of being judged, of not measuring up. And for kids, those feelings can be really tough. This research also brought up another important point, the risk of kids internalizing their family's financial struggles as personal failures.
It's heartbreaking to think about a child shouldering that kind of burden, believing that if they were just better somehow, their family wouldn't be struggling.
Right. It's a lot to carry. And it's crucial to remember that kids are still figuring out who they are, their place in the world. Honesty is important, but so is protecting their self-esteem, their optimism, allowing them to dream big without feeling limited by their family's financial situation.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance between being transparent and protecting our kids, making sure that our conversations about money empower them, not burden them.
Exactly. It's not just about what we say, but how we say it. It's about being mindful of our language, our own anxieties, and the impact our words might have on our children.
It's about creating that safe and supportive space where kids feel loved and accepted for who they are, no matter their family's financial situation.
And ultimately, it's about equipping our kids with the tools and values they need to navigate the world with confidence, empathy, and a healthy relationship with money.
It's funny how this all comes back to a basic truth about being a parent.
Yeah.
It's not about getting it perfect. It's about making progress.
Right. Learning as you go. We don't need all the answers right away.
Exactly. And the good news is there are a lot of practical things we can all do, no matter, our money situation or how comfortable we are even talking about money.
Okay, so let's get into those actionable takeaways, because I know our listeners are probably like, okay, give me the tips already.
All right, let's get practical. I think the first thing is really shifting how we think about it. Instead of getting stuck on this, should we tell them everything or not? Let's think about what are those core values, those money habits that we want our kids to have.
I like that. So not about the numbers so much, but the how we want our kids to handle money, right?
Do we want them to understand saving, being resourceful, waiting for what they want, knowing the difference between a need and a want? These are all things we can work into our everyday talks with them, even when they're little.
And those are good lessons for pretty much everything, not just money.
Exactly. And the best part is, life gives us so many opportunities to teach these things, like having them help with grocery shopping, Figuring out meals for the week or even planning a family outing, those can be great learning moments.
I love that. It's like you're sneaking in those life lessons.
Right.
And speaking of sneaky, what about allowance?
Oh, allowance. It can be really useful if you're thoughtful about it. It gives kids that ownership, that control over a little bit of money so they can make choices and see what happens, good and bad.
It's real life experience, right? Making those decisions and dealing with the consequences. But let's be real, allowance can turn into a whole thing, especially if it's tied to chores or, how they're behaving.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a good point. The key is being consistent, being clear about what you expect. If it's about teaching them to manage money, then we got to let them, make some mistakes, not bail them out every time they overspend.
Right, finding that balance between guiding them and letting them figure it out.
100%. And this whole allowance thing brings up something else. What about families who aren't struggling with money? Should they be more open, or does that risk making kids feel entitled?
It's tricky, right? You want them to appreciate what they have, but also realize that not everyone has those same advantages.
Right. It's about those open conversations. Again, always going back to your family's values. Even if you don't share every detail about your finances, you can still teach them to be grateful, generous, and to understand the importance of helping others.
It's about raising good humans, right? Not just kids with a lot of money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kids who are aware of the world around them and their place in it. And remember that research we talked about how some cultures see revealing financial struggles as potentially harmful. Well, there's something in there for everyone, even families who are doing well financially.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
It's a reminder that every kid, no matter their background, needs to feel loved for who they are, not for what their family has or doesn't have.
It's about making sure their self-worth isn't tied to money, which, let's be honest, is really hard these days with social media and everything.
So true. If we tie our self-worth to money, we're giving all our power away to something we can't fully control.
And that's a recipe for unhappiness, right? So as parents, we've got to be aware of what messages we're sending, whether we mean to or not, because our kids are watching us, listening to how we talk about money, how we handle it.
It's that old saying, kids might not always listen, but they're always watching.
It's so true. And let's be real, none of us are perfect at this. We all have our own money baggage, right?
Right.
Our own insecurities, maybe even some bad habits we've picked up along the way. But admitting that, that's the first step, isn't it?
Totally. Showing them that it's okay to not know everything, to ask for help, to keep learning, even when it comes to something as intimidating as money. That's huge.
So important. But I imagine for some people, even with the best intentions, these money conversations can feel overwhelming. Like, where do you even start?
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot to take in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where finding some support, some guidance can make a world of difference.
So let's talk about that. What are some good resources for families who want a little help figuring this out?
There's so many great ones. Think about age-appropriate books and games, websites. There are even whole programs dedicated to financial literacy for kids. And don't underestimate the power of your community, Talking to other parents, teachers, even financial advisors can give you some really helpful insights and different perspectives.
It really does take a village, right? Especially with something as important as raising kids who are financially responsible. We don't have to figure it all out on our own.
Right. And I think what's most important, even with all this information and advice, is really coming at these conversations from a place of love.
Because at the end of the day, it's about so much more than money, right? It's about raising kind, compassionate humans who are ready to make the world a better place.
That's what it's all about. It's those core values, the ones that'll guide them in everything they do, not just their bank accounts, how they treat others, how they make decisions. It's all connected.
And you know what I love about this whole thing? When we really dive into these money conversations with our kids, we end up growing right alongside them.
Oh, absolutely. Parenting is a journey, right? It's always about learning and growing.
Mm-hmm.
And those tough conversations, like about money, they can actually bring you closer,
Totally. Turning those potentially awkward moments into opportunities to connect and learn together.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
That's what makes it all worthwhile.
It really is. So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into, well, kids and money, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Ooh, I always love a good thought-provoking question.
What if, and just hear me out on this, what if those little everyday moments, the ones that pop up out of nowhere, are actually the best times to teach our kids about money? Not the big lectures or the formal talks, but those little teachable moments that happen naturally.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it is a journey, isn't it? It's not about having all the answers. It's about showing up, being present, and making the most of those everyday opportunities.
That's a great way to put it. Well, on that note, we'll let you go mull that over. Until next time, remember, keep those conversations going with your kids. There's no one right way to do this. Just be thoughtful, be loving, and hey, don't forget to have a little fun along the way.